Please subscribe, like and share this video. Thank you for your support.
2 U.S. Code Chapter 30, Operation and Maintenance of Capital Complex. 2 U.S. Code Subchapter 3, Restaurants. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 2051, Continued Benefits for Certain Senate Restaurants Employees. A. Definitions in this section. 1. Contractor. The term contractor means the private business concern that enters into a food services contract with the architect of the capital. 2. Covered individual. The term covered individual means any individual who A. is a Senate Restaurants employee who is an employee of the architect of the capital on July 17, 2008, including I. a permanent, full-time or part-time employee, 2. a temporary, full-time or part-time employee, and 3. an employee in a position described under Section 2048(1) of this title, B. becomes an employee of the contractor under a food services contract on the transfer date, and C. with respect to benefits under subsection C. 2 or 3, files an election before the transfer date with the Office of Human Resources of the Architect of the Capital to have one or more benefits continued in accordance with this section. 3. Food Services Contract. The term food services contract means a contract under which food services operations of the Senate restaurants are transferred to, and performed by, a private business concern. 4. Transfer date. The term transfer date means the date on which a contractor begins the performance of food services operations under a food services contract. B. Election of coverage. 1. In general, A. Retirement coverage not later than the day before the transfer date, an individual described under subsection A. 2. A and B may file an election with the Office of Human Resources of the Architect of the Capital to continue coverage under the retirement system under which that individual is covered on that day. B. Life and health insurance coverage. If the individual files an election under subparagraph A to continue retirement coverage, the individual may also file an election with the Office of Human Resources of the Architect of the Capital to continue coverage of any other benefit under subsection C. 2 or 3 for which that individual is covered on that day. Any election under this subparagraph shall be filed not later than the day before the transfer date. 2. Notification to the Office of Personnel Management. The Office of Human Resources of the Architect of the Capital shall provide timely notification to the Office of Personnel Management of any election filed under paragraph 1. C. Continuity of benefits. 1. Pay. The rate of basic pay of a covered individual as an employee of a contractor, or successor contractor, during a period of continuous service may not be reduced to a rate less than the rate of basic pay paid to that individual as an employee of the Architect of the Capital on the day before the transfer date, except for cause. 2. Retirement and life insurance benefits. A. In general, I. Treatment of service for purposes of Chapters 83, 84, and 87 of Title V. Any period of continuous service performed by a covered individual as an employee of a contractor, or successor contractor, shall be deemed to be a period of service as an employee of the Architect of the Capital. 2. Treatment of pay for purposes of Chapter 87 of Title V. The rate of basic pay of a covered individual during the period described under Clause I shall be deemed to be the rate of basic pay of that individual as an employee of the Architect of the Capital on the date on which the Architect of the Capital enters into the food services contract. B. Treatment as civil service retirement offset employees in the case of a covered individual who on the day before the transfer date is subject to Subchapter 3 of Chapter 83 of Title V but whose employment with the Architect of the Capital is not employment for purposes of Title II of the Social Security Act, 42 U.S.C. 401 et seq. In Chapter 21 of Title 26, I. The employment described under subparagraph A. I. shall, for purposes of Subchapter 3 of Chapter 83 of Title V, be deemed to be I. employment of an individual described under Section 8402(b)(2) of Title V, and 2. Federal service as defined under Section 8349(c) of Title V, and 2. The basic pay described under subparagraph A. 2. For employment described under subparagraph A. I. shall be deemed to be federal wages as defined under Section 8334(k)(2)(ci) of Title V. 3. Health insurance benefits for purposes of Chapters 89, 89A, and 89B of Title V. Any period of continuous service performed by a covered individual as an employee of a contractor, or successor contractor, shall be deemed to be a period of service as an employee of the Architect of the Capital. 4. Leave. A. Credits of leave subject to Section 6304 of Title V. Annual and sick leave balances of any covered individual shall be credited to the leave accounts of that individual as an employee of the contractor, or any successor contractor. A food services contract may include provisions similar to regulations prescribed under Section 6308 of Title V to implement this subparagraph. B. Accrual rate. During any period of continuous service performed by a covered individual as an employee of a contractor, or successor contractor, that individual shall continue to accrue annual and sick leave at rates not less than the rates applicable to that individual on the day before the transfer date. C. Omitted. 5. Transit subsidy for purposes of any benefit under Section 7905 of Title V. Any period of continuous service performed by a covered individual as an employee of a contractor, or successor contractor, shall be deemed to be a period of service as an employee of the architect of the capital. 6. Employee pay, government contributions, transit subsidy payments, and other benefits. A. Payment by contractor. A contractor, or any successor to the contractor, shall pay, I. the pay of a covered individual as an employee of a contractor, or successor contractor, during a period of continuous service. 2. Government contributions for the benefits of a covered individual under paragraph 2 or 3. 3. Any transit subsidy for a covered individual under paragraph 5, and IV. Any payment for any other benefit for a covered individual in accordance with a food services contract. B. Reimbursements and payments by architect of the capital from appropriations made available to the architect of the capital under the heading Senate Office Buildings. Under the heading Architect of the Capital, the architect of the capital shall I. reimburse a contractor, or any successor contractor, for that portion of any payment under subparagraph A which the architect of the capital agreed to pay under a food services contract, and 2. Pay a contractor, or any successor contractor, for any administrative fee, or portion of an administrative fee which the architect of the capital agreed to pay under a food services contract. 7. Regulations. A. Office of Personnel Management. I. In general, after consultation with the architect of the capital, the director of the Office of Personnel Management shall prescribe regulations to provide for the continuity of benefits under paragraphs 2 and 3. 2. Contents. Regulations under this subparagraph shall I. include regulations relating to employee deductions and employee and employer contributions and deposits in the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund, the Employees' Life Insurance Fund, and the Employees' Health Benefits Fund, and 2. Provide for the architect of the capital to perform employer administrative functions necessary to ensure administration of continued coverage of benefits under paragraphs 2 and 3, including receipt and transmission of the deductions, contributions, and deposits described under subclause I, the collection and transmission of such information as necessary, and the performance of other administrative functions as may be required. B. Thrift Savings Plans. Benefits. After consultation with the architect of the capital, the executive director appointed by the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board under Section 8474A of Title V shall prescribe regulations to provide for the continuity of benefits under paragraph 2 of this subsection relating to subchapter 3 of Chapter 84 of that title. Regulations under this subparagraph shall include regulations relating to employee deductions and employee and employer contributions and deposits in the Thrift Savings Fund. D. Covered individuals not entitled to severance pay. 1. In general, except as provided under paragraph 2, a covered individual shall not be entitled to severance pay under Section 5595 of Title V by reason of A. Separation from service with the architect of the capital and becoming an employee of a contractor under a food services contract, or B. Termination of employment with a contractor, or successor to a contractor. 2. Separation during 90-day period. A. In general, I. Covered individuals except as provided under Clause 2. A covered individual shall be entitled to severance pay under Section 5595 of Title V if during the 90-day period following the transfer date the employment of that individual with a contractor is terminated as provided under a food services contract. 2. Exception Clause I shall not apply to a covered individual who is terminated for cause B. Treatment for purposes of Section 5595 of Title V. I. Any period of continuous service performed by a covered individual described under subparagraph A as an employee of a contractor shall be deemed to be a period of service as an employee of the architect of the capital, and 2. Any termination of employment of a covered individual described under subparagraph A with a contractor shall be treated as a separation from service with the architect of the capital. E. Voluntary separation incentive payments. 1. Submission of plan not later than 30 days after July 17, 2008, the architect of the capital shall submit a plan under Section 4505 of this title to the applicable committees as provided under that section. 2. Plan A. In general, notwithstanding Section 4505E of this title, the plan submitted under this subsection shall I. Offer a voluntary separation incentive payment to any employee described under subsection A2A of this section in accordance with Section 4505 of this title, and 2. Offer such a payment to any such employee who becomes a covered individual if that individual accepts the offer during the 90-day period following the transfer date. B. Treatment of covered individuals for purposes of the plan under this subsection I. Any period of continuous service performed by a covered individual as an employee of a contractor shall be deemed to be a period of service as an employee of the architect of the capital, and 2. Any termination of employment of a covered individual with a contractor shall be treated as a separation from service with the architect of the capital. F. Early retirement treatment for certain separated employees. 1. In general, this subsection applies to a. An employee of the Senate Restaurants of the Office of the Architect of the Capitol who I. Voluntarily separates from service on or after July 17, 2008, but prior to the day before the transfer date, and 2. On such date of separation, I. has completed 25 years of service as defined under Section 8331(12) or 8401(26) of Title V, or 2. has completed 20 years of such service and is at least 50 years of age, and b. except as provided under paragraph 2, a covered individual, I. whose employment with a contractor is terminated as provided under a food services contract during the 90-day period following the transfer date, and 2. on the date of such termination, I. has completed 25 years of service as defined under Section 8331(12) or 8401(26) of Title V, or 2. has completed 20 years of such service and is at least 50 years of age. 2. Exception paragraph 1b shall not apply to a covered individual who is terminated for cause. 3. Treatment A. Annuity. Notwithstanding any provision of Chapter 83 or 84 of Title V, an employee described under paragraph 1 is entitled to an annuity which shall be computed consistent with the provisions of law applicable to annuities under Section 8336D or 8414B of Title V. B. Separation during 90-day period for purposes of Chapter 83 or 84 of Title V, I. Any period of continuous service performed by a covered individual described under paragraphs 1, b, and 2 as an employee of a contractor shall be deemed to be a period of service as an employee of the Architect of the Capitol, and 2. Any termination of employment of a covered individual described under paragraphs 1, b, and 2 with the contractor shall be treated as a separation from service with the Architect of the Capitol. G. Congressional Accountability Act of 1995, 1, 2, omitted. 3. Continuing application to certain acts and omissions for purposes of the Congressional Accountability Act of 1995, 2 U.S.C. 1301 et seq. A covered individual shall be treated as an employee of the Architect of the Capitol with respect to any act or omission which occurred before the transfer date. H. Deposit of commissions. 1. Senate Restaurants Food Services Contract. Any commissions paid by a contractor under a food services contract shall be deposited in the miscellaneous items account within the contingent fund of the Senate. 2. Use of funds. Any funds deposited under paragraph 1 shall be available for expenditure in the same manner as funds appropriated into that account. I. Effective date. This section shall take effect on July 17, 2008, and apply to the remainder of the fiscal year in which enacted and each fiscal year thereafter. 2 U.S. Code paragraph 2052, Senate Restaurant Deficit Fund, deposit of proceeds from surcharge on orders. The Committee on Rules and Administration of the United States Senate is authorized and directed hereafter to add a minimum of 10% to each order in excess of 10 cents served in the Senate restaurants and 20% to all orders served outside of said restaurants, and the proceeds accruing therefrom shall be placed in a fund to be used in the payment of any deficit incurred in the management of such kitchens and restaurants.